Good morning, everyone. Today I want to tell you a true story, not just a professional story, not just a special education story. This is a full circle story. This is about what happens when life sends you back to the same place that helped shape you. For me, that place was Chesterfield County Public Schools. I attended elementary school there. I attended middle school there. I attended high school there. And then years later, I came back. But this time, I was not carrying a backpack. I was carrying lesson plans, IEP folders, progress monitoring data, and the kind of responsibility that makes you check your email before your tea finishes brewing. I came back as a special education teacher. And let me tell you, walking back into your old school system as an adult is a strange feeling. It is like your past and your present meet in the hallway and say, well, look who finally learned how to use the copier. That is where this story begins. I did not just return to education. I returned to my own educational neighborhood. That matters because a school district is not just buildings, buses, bells, and board policies. A school district is memory. It is the place where you learned who you were becoming before you had the language to explain it. When I came back to Chesterfield County Public Schools, I was not just entering a workplace. I was walking back into a place that had once held my childhood. Every hallway had a memory. There was the hallway where I probably walked too fast because I was late. There was the classroom where I hoped the teacher would not call on me. There was the cafeteria where school lunch felt like a social event, a survival test, and a mystery meal all at the same time. But now I was back with a badge. That badge changed everything. As a student, you are trying to figure out where you fit. As a teacher, you're trying to help students believe they fit. As a special education teacher, you are often helping students and families understand that support is not a weakness. Support is an access. That is the plot twist. The same system that helped raise me now had students depending on me. And when you return to the school system that helped raise you, every hallway has a memory, and every staff meeting has a plot twist. Now, my version did not have a laugh track. It had IEP meetings. The show had sweat hogs. I had progress reports, service minutes, behavior plans, and former teacher with excellent memories. And that is an important detail, excellent memories. Because when you return to the same school system where you once sat as a student, people remember things. Things you thought had been erased. Things you thought were safely buried in the archives of childhood. But former teachers are different. Former teachers do not need PowerSchool, Synergy, or Student Information System. They have a memory database with unlimited storage. They remember your handwriting. They remember your personality. They remember when you were quiet. And they especially remember when you were quiet mostly. The word mostly can humble a grown educator very quickly. But underneath the humor was something powerful. I was now standing in the same kind of role that once shaped me. I was no longer just remembering what school felt like. I was responsible for shaping what school felt like for someone else. This is when the story stopped being just funny. This is when it became purpose. On the first day back, I realized something very quickly. The building may feel the same, but your seat has changed. As a student, I was trying not to be called on. As a teacher, I was calling on students. As a student, I hoped the teacher forgot yesterday's homework. As a teacher, I knew exactly who forgot the homework and who had developed a full legal defense about why it was not their fault. As a student, I walked quickly through the hallway, hoping nobody noticed the awkward phase. As a teacher, I had keys, a mailbox, responsibility, an inbox that seemed personally committed to my character development. That shift is humbling. Teachers understand this. Administrators understand this too. There comes a moment in education when you realize the adults were doing more than you knew. When you are a student, you see the teacher at the front of the room. You do not see the planning. You do not see the parent phone calls. You do not see the team meetings. You do not see the data collection. You do not see the teacher sitting in the parking lot for 3 quiet minutes before walking into the building with professional energy. But when you become the educator, you see it. You understand that teaching is not just what happens between the bells. Teaching is an emotional labor. Teaching is decision making. Teaching is communication. Teaching is advocacy. Teaching is sometimes drinking cold coffee while trying to remember if you made copies. And special education adds another layer, because now you're not just teaching content, you're building access. You're helping students receive what they need to participate, grow, and experience success. That is a serious responsibility. Now let's talk about the Teacher Lounge. Every school has one. The Teacher Lounge is part break room, part therapy center, part information hub, and part historical society. When your former teachers become your colleagues, the Teacher Lounge becomes a time machine. Some people remembered my growth. Some remembered my handwriting. Some remembered stories I had placed in permanent mental storage. And somehow, the Teacher Lounge knew everything. I like to say former teachers have a database that no school information system can match. No password needed. No two-factor authentication. No loading screen. Just one teacher saying, "I remember when," and immediately you know the story is about to go somewhere dangerous. But here's what made it special. Those former teachers were not laughing at me. They were celebrating the journey. They had seen me as a student, and now they are seeing me as a professional. That is powerful. For teachers, this is a reminder that we never fully know the long-term impact of our work. The student sitting in the back of the room may one day become a teacher. The student who needed extra support may one day become a leader. The student who struggled with confidence may one day stand in front of other educators telling a story about purpose. For administrators, this is a reminder that school culture lasts longer than any one school year. Students remember how adults made them feel. Teachers remember who supported them. Families remember who listened. Communities remember whether the school cared. Schools remember. That is why culture matters. The Teacher Lounge is where the yearbook starts talking. And when the yearbook starts talking, you just have to smile and hope the story is appropriate for a professional development session. But in all seriousness, there is something beautiful about working beside people who once taught you. It gives you perspective. You begin to understand that your teachers were human. They were not just assigning giving machines. they had families, they had hard days, they had meetings, they had deadlines, they had students who challenged them and students who inspired them. And now you're one of them. That realization changes how you see the profession. It also changes how you see students, because every student is still becoming. The student who is disorganized today may become a leader tomorrow. The student who needs redirection today may become the adult who mentors others tomorrow. The student who is struggling today may one day come back and say, "Thank you. You helped me." That is why we cannot reduce students to one bad day, one behavior, one test score, one referral, or one IEP label. The Data King mindset says, look at the data, but do not forget the story. Data tells us where a student is. Relationships help us move them forward. And that combination matters. Now, every educator has a please do not bring that up file. Mine apparently had multiple tabs. This is where the classic "I remember you when" story, that story usually begins with a smile. And when a former teacher smiles before telling a story, you already know you may need legal representation. And then there is the "you were quiet mostly" story. Let's talk about that word mostly. Mostly is not just a word. Mostly is a whole discipline folder wearing a bow tie. It means you were good, but let us not rewrite history too aggressively. And then there is the most meaningful one. Your mom would be proud. That one changes the room, because all of a student, the joke becomes a full circle moment. You realize that people saw your growth. They saw where you started. They saw where you were going. And now they see you serving students in the same system that once served you. That is deeply personal. That is what makes education different from many professions. In education, we are not just producing outcomes. We are participating in human development. Teachers and administrators are part of someone's story, whether we realize it or not. The question is, what kind of part are we playing? Are we the adult who discouraged a student, or are we the adult who helped a student believe there was more ahead? That question should stay with us. Now, nostalgia is nice, but special education does not let you live on nostalgia alone. Eventually, the memories met the IEP binder, and that is when the work became very real. The memories were funny. The responsibility was serious. The students needed strong instruction. Families needed trust. IEPs needed clarity. Services needed follow-through. Progress monitoring needed evidence. And meetings needed both compliance and compassion. As a special education teacher, I had to understand that I was not just returning to my old district. I was now responsible for helping students navigate it. That is a big shift. For teachers, this means we have to see the IEP as more than paperwork. The IEP is the student's access plan. It is a team's commitment. It is the bridge between need and support. For administrators, this means special education cannot be treated as a side department. It is not over there. It is part of the core work of the school. Special education touches instruction, behavior, scheduling, staffing, family engagement, compliance, culture, and student outcomes. That is why leadership matters. The Data King mindset says we do not just collect data to say we have it. We use data to make better decisions. If a student is not making progress, the data should start a conversation. If services are being missed, the data should trigger action. If teachers are overwhelmed, the data should inform staffing and support. If families are confused, the data should improve communication. Data without action is just decoration. And students do not need decorative systems. They need responsive systems. Now, not everyone returns to the same school district where they grew up, but I believe every educator has a welcome back moment. Maybe it is teaching in the community that raised you. Maybe it is working with a teacher who once inspired you. Maybe it is seeing your younger self in a current student. Maybe it is realizing that the adult you once questioned were carrying more responsibility than you understood at the time. Or maybe it is becoming the calm, steady person that you once needed when you were a student. That is a powerful thing. Education has a way of bringing us back to ourselves. Teachers often enter the profession because someone made a difference for them. Administrators often step into leadership because they want to create better systems for students and staff. Special education professionals often do this work because they believe access, dignity, and support should not depend on luck. Sometimes your career takes you back to the place where your purpose first started whispering. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can just work there, or you can serve there. There is a difference. Working there means you complete tasks. Serving there means you understand the human impact of the task. The IEP meeting is not just a meeting. The schedule is not just a schedule. The accommodation is not just a checkbox. The phone call home is not just communication. It is all part of whether a student experiences school as a place of possibilities. Let me close with this. I went back to the same school system that helped shape me, and I learned that the past does not follow you. Sometimes it teaches besides you. Sometimes it sits in the teacher's lounge with coffee. Sometimes it reminds you of who you were. Sometimes it shows you how far you've come. And sometimes it challenges you to leave the place better than you found it. That is the leadership lesson. When you return to the place that helped build you, make sure you leave it better for the students coming behind you. For teachers, that means keep showing up, even when work is hard, even when the paperwork is heavy, even when the progress feels slow. Your impact is bigger than the moment you are in. For administrators, that means build systems that support people, support teachers before they burn out, support students before they fall through gaps, Support families before frustration becomes conflict. Support special education not as a compliance requirement, but as a commitment to access and dignity. Because every student walking through our building is becoming someone. And one day, that student may return. Maybe as a teacher, maybe as a leader, maybe as a parent, maybe as someone who says, "This school helped shape me." That is the Data King message. Use information, use strategy, use heart, and never forget that behind every data point is a student with a story. Thank you and goodbye.